All right, class. So we will continue our discussion in this video. We are going to talk about the continuation in the lesson related to space. Okay. So in this particular topic, we discuss about linear perspective as what we had the last time, from which we talk about the famous Last Supper of Leonardo da Vinci. So that is one of the examples of using perspective in this element of art, which is the space. Okay, so in continuation, this time we will be having another example of a perspective, which is now using the atmospheric perspective. Okay, so going back to the definition of linear perspective that we had last time. So the linear perspective is a geometrically constructed illusion of the recession of space. So we tackled about that example through the Last Supper by Leonardo da Vinci. So fast forward, so we discussed a lot of things related to this, and now we will, again, as what I have told you, continue the discussion using another perspective, and this time this is an example of an atmospheric perspective. So when we say atmospheric perspective, it produces the illusion of space and distance within the picture or picture plane using color and focus. Okay, so with the use of color and focus, so there will be this kind of appearance in this particular artwork, okay, that we can see right now. So in this example, in this artwork, you can see that as objects recede into the distance, they become paler, hazier, and bluer in color. So because of that style of working on this artwork, so nagbigay siya ng impression, no, na parang you are really looking or viewing this kind of scenery na kung saan is para kang nasa actual place, na makikita mo yung talagang parang actual view, okay, nung lugar na yan, no? So this was done by Albert Bierstadt. Okay, so this is an example of an oil on a canvas. So ginawa niya ito sa New York after nilang bumisita dito sa particular place na to, somewhere in the west part of America during 1800s or 1863. Okay, so nung time na yan parang sumama lang itong si Albert Bierstadt sa isang exploration, okay, or expedition which is related by siguro a government expedition na kung saan pinupuntahan nila itong mga ganitong klase ng lugar for the sake of like knowing the particular place na gusto nilang pwedeng i-colonize or i-conquer, no, something like that. So makikita natin dito sa painting na to, no, na yung perspective na binibigay, which is somewhat different from the linear perspective na meron tayo last time using the linear perspective. Okay, dito parang ang nag-work dito to give another perspective is the use of color, the tone, the color, okay, na nagbibigay ng ganitong klase ng view sa ganitong example ng artwork. Okay, so in this artwork, Bierstadt creates the illusion of deep space, okay, in his painting of the American West by using dramatic atmospheric perspective. So medyo, although we divided a painting, no, like we divided the painting through 3 parts, no. So this has a foreground, the middle ground, and the background. So the atmospheric perspective here is like giving us the view na kung saan parang natatanaw mo hanggang yung kalayo-layuan ng lugar na parang you are really looking at a specific view, okay, ng mga mountainous part na yan, no, the craggy mountains na ang dating na niya, since parang papalayo ka na at since nandiyan ka sa particular place na yan, is parang nagiging hazy na siya sa kalayuan. So alam naman natin, di ba, na kapag medyo matataas na yung mga bundok, kapag lalo na sa mga malalamig na lugar, kapag medyo malalayo na, parang hindi na siya nabu-view as kung ano yung talaga yung actual na itsura at kulay niya, kasi syempre marami ng atmospheric alam niyo yun, particles, something like that, molecules in air na pwede maka-affect sa view natin, katulad ng mga alam mo, haze, yung smoke or fog, no, nagiging parang foggy na yung dating niya, and then yung presence ng mga clouds lalo na sa peak part, yung sa matataas part na ng bundok. So nailarawan yun, no, napakaganda ng pagkaka-paint dito ni Albert Bierstadt. Actually sikat na sikat ng taong to when it comes to landscape painting, and also in relation to, I think, photography, no? So siguro tong taong to meron siya talagang strong photographic memory na after niya tong makita, hindi naman niya pinin kaagad eh. After nilang dumalaw dyan sa lugar na yan, and then bumalik, after nilang dalawin yung lugar na yan, tingnan yung area, no, i-visit, and then pagbalik nila sa New York, doon pa lang niya ulit pinit kung ano yung base sa kanyang nakita. So naging napaka-dramatic nung view at naging napakaganda nung view. Kaya nga dito sa sumunod na part, nag-include ako ng tao na para bang ang sarap tumayo dito sa particular place na to, and then just looking at this parang mala-paradise na view na ito na nagawa ni Albert Bierstadt na parang makatotohanan talaga yung view na nakikita mo yung actual na itsura, okay? Nung scenery na yan, okay? That is somewhere, sa panahon ngayon, ito daw is somewhere in Wyoming, okay? Na lugar in America. At nakikita natin dito, okay? So sabi ko nga sa inyo, it is divided into 3, okay? So every time naman actually yung mga artwork, they are mostly gano'n, no? Divided into 3. The first part, this is usually the foreground. And of course, we have the middle ground at yun yung background. Okay, sa background, of course, nandun yung doon yung naging emphasis ng concept na ginamit dito, which is the atmospheric perspective, okay? From which there is that series of hazy blue mountains which softly fade into the blue sky. So hindi siya yung dark na blue, yung parang medyo hazy, yun nga yung dating niya, no? And then dito naman sa middle ground, it shows dramatically lit area of craggy mountains with a cascading waterfall. Ayan, oh. So yung merong napakagandang waterfall dito na parang kumbaga meron siyang malakas na tubig na rumaragasang. Syempre alam naman natin yung mga waterfalls, no, kung nakakakita na tayo niyan sa mga kabundukan. And then the craggy mountains there na ano siya, kumbaga kitang-kita mo yung mga bato-bato, yung part na mayroong mga tulis-tulis na ganyan. So ganun yung view na talagang makikita mo. Ganyan talaga yung actual na itsura niyan sa actual, okay? Sa reality. Alright, and then pagdating dito sa foreground, dito sa pinakang baba, binigyan ng emphasis dito yung area nung ito yung mga Native American. So ang tawag sa mga to ay yung mga Shoshone, okay? So, sila daw yung tinatawag mga Native American tribe, okay, nung araw na nananahan sa lugar na yan bago pa kumbaga magkaroon ng pagbabago na kung saan siguro nasakop na sila ng mga white, no, nagkaroon na ng mga changes. Okay? This is their civilization na kung saan dyan sila namumuhay ng payapa. It seems like they are in paradise, no? Na ayan, yung mga hayop, mga alaga nila, yung klase ng mga bahay nila, na style ng mga Native American na nakatira dyan sa lugar na yan. Na kung saan, dinrawing to ni Albert Bierstadt na medyo soft ang dating with parang golden light na ginamit, no? Yung may pagka manilaw-nilaw. So parang alam mo yung parang yung liwanag ng araw na parang golden yung dating sa reflection, okay, nung mga bagay-bagay na tinatamaan ito. So ayun yung pinakang pagkakagawa. So this is how linear perspective, this is how atmospheric perspective rather is shown in this particular artwork of Albert Bierstadt, the Rocky Mountains, Landers Peak. That is oil in a canvas. So actually ang kasama niya dyan sa pagta-travel na yan is si Frederick W. Lander. Kaya siguro there is this Lander included in the name of this artwork. Okay? So that's it. Now let's proceed to another element of art. So we are done with the space and we discuss a lot of example in relation to that space. This time we will proceed to texture. So when we speak of texture, we define it as the tactile quality of surface. So something that has something to do with the sense of touch, no? Yung kung paano yung parang nakikita mo is parang it has alam mo yun, parang may dating siya sa atin in a sense, okay, of our touch, something that is related to na sa mga bagay na parang akala mo nahahawakan mo or merong kakaibang texture na related doon sa mga bagay na yan. Okay, so this is an example. This is an actual texture. And this is an example of simulated texture. So this is actual texture kasi itong gumawa nito, no, this is like a sculpture. Okay? And this is an example of a texture using texture, but then itong klase ng style na to, pwede rin siyang lumabas sa painting. Ang example ng painting na gano'n, na kung saan parang may sense of touch na parang pwede mong mahipo, yung naka-emboss yung mga example ng painting, yung mga impasto. Kung familiar kayo dyan, no, yung parang buo-buo yung painting. I mean, buo-buo yung paint, no, na ipinapahid, for example, sa canvas. So hindi siya yung kagaya usually ng ginagamitan ng brush stroke, na kung saan ay kumbaga ini-spread, no, yung paint, hindi magastos. Pero ang impasto paintings ay example niyan is yung talagang buo-buong kinakahig yung paint, itinatapal for example dun sa canvas, at siya ay merong mga texture na nakaumbok, na kumbaga pwede mong mahipo yung mga texture na nabubuo doon. So yun yung example ng actual texture. Pero this particular example here, this is not a 2D, okay, example. This is an example of a sculpture, okay, something that is 3D. So later on we will be talking about this particular example, as well as this one, which is the simulated texture. So as we define it, it is the visual representation or illusion of a tactile surface and is common in two-dimensional works of art. Okay, so this is the 2D example of using texture, which is simulated, and this one is a 3D example of texture, which is an actual texture. Okay, so going back. So ito, yung sinasabi ko sa inyo kanina, which is done by Meret Oppenheim. So the title of this particular artwork is Object, okay? Object lang yung title niya, okay? So this is a kind of cup. So teacup lang talaga yan actually, or I think cup, something like that. Cup na binalutan ng balahibo, okay? Fur, okay? That is, I think from a Chinese gazelle fur, okay? Na platit, I mean, cup. And then yung platito, ganun din, binalutan niya, at yung spoon na to, binalutan niya. No? Parang something na pagka nakita mo siya, parang ang sarap hipuin, ang lambot-lambot ng balahibo. So it has something to do with the texture, no? So this actual example, this is an example of an actual texture. So it is intrinsic to sculpture works of art, but is also present in some two-dimensional works. Sabi ko nga sa inyo kanina, later on meron tayong example nun. Okay? From which paint has been thickly applied to the surface. So I explained that example of impasto. So this is actual texture. This is important in Meret Oppenheim's surrealist teacup entitled Object. So the beauty of the gazelle fur both attracts and repels the viewer while also rendering the object as useless. Okay, alam mo yun, parang nakaka-attract kasi something different, no? Ang ganda ng idea, na imagine mo yung naisip mong balutan ng fur ang isang teacup, na kung saan anong connect nila sa isa't isa, no? So they are in contracting concept, no, na a teacup. Tapos imagine mo kung gagamitin mo yan sa pag-inom, no? So something na merong parang kikilit-kilitit sa labi mo kapag ka uminom ka, okay? So actually class, nagawa yan or nangyari yan due to the time na sabi daw, ang pangyayari kasi kung bakit nabuo yung idea ni Meret Oppenheim in this particular sculpture, no, ng object na ito, titled Object, is during the time na in Paris, itong si Meret Oppenheim with another man, I think another woman or something, Dora Maar, yes, and then with Pablo Picasso, no, parang nasa isang cafe sila, siguro syempre umiinom sila doon ng kape, for example, okay, or tea, something like that. And then tung si Pablo Picasso is pinansin niya, no, yung bracelet na suot-suot nito ni Meret. And then sabi niya parang kasi yung suot-suot ni Meret that time is parang bracelet na parang medyo may design na mayroon ding fur, something like that. And then yun nga, nag-joke itong si Pablo Picasso na siguro lahat ng bagay, no, pwedeng lagyan ng balahibo, parang ganon. So sumagot naman tong si Meret, oo, siguro, katulad nitong teacup na to at saka itong platito na to. And then yun, parang yung joke time nila na yun habang sila nandoon nga sa cafe na yon, is parang nag kay Meret no? Parang siguro alam niyo naman pag mga magkakatropa minsan, no, tapos meron kayong joke time na hanggang pag-uwi niyo dala-dala niyo pa rin. So nagbigay ng idea sa kanya na gumawa ng particular sculpture na ito nga, bumili siya ng teacup na white, platito, kutsara sa isang department store, and then nilagyan niya dinesignan niya, no, using gazelle fur, at binalutan niya noon, at yun na, doon na nag-start itong sculpture na to, na actually, yan, hanggang ngayon, pinag-aaralan pa rin, no, as an example of an artwork. So actually, this is something that is related to some of the artworks that are under surrealism. So yan yung klase ng pagbabago sa mundo ng art during that time, starting from World War I up to the World War II, or at the end of World War II, something like that, na kung saan, alam mo yun, nag-i-start na yung mga artists na magkaroon sila ng another style when it comes to art, no, na hindi lang yung parang mga ordinary expressionism, yung mga kagaya nung sa mga Renaissance ideas na style ng artwork. So dito medyo iba na, nagkakaroon na, nagiging mas gumagawa na sila ng mga something that is related to subconscious mind, na yung mga bagay na having contradicting meaning or contradicting concept, na kung saan pinagsasama nila, no, something like that. So that is an example, okay? So dito nga nasabi nga yung art has to do with spirit, not with decoration. Okay, so ito kasi how artists they are giving their interpretation in this particular artwork, no, in this particular sculpture of Merit. So yun nga, they have concluded na okay, part yan ng tinatawag natin kumbaga freedom of expression ng mga artists, na in such a way that na hindi sila nakukulong lang in particular style na kung ano yung karaniwang nag-exist or nag-exist na in the past. Okay, so this is an example of like kumbaga medyo changes, no, na nangyayari when it comes to the world of art during that time. Okay, so that is why sabi nga daw dito, nung inanalyze yung artwork na yan, is that the fur may remind viewers of wild animals in nature, and at the same time, the teacup naman is suggesting the manners and civilization. So, di ba? So, teacup, usually ginagamit to or ginagamit to ng mga tao, di ba? During the time that they are talking with someone, no? Parang nasa isang gathering, o kaya naman is meron kang kausap, ka-meeting. So, it has something to do with people, okay, and their social relationship, something like that. While yung fur is something that is related to nature and animal. So how come that, you know, she was able to blend those, no? Napagsama niya, napag-combine niya, and boom, to have this kind of particular artwork. So with its spell, the teacup becomes soft, rounded, and highly tactile. It seems attractive to the touch. Okay, so parang ang sarap hipuin. Sabi ko nga sa inyo kanina, nag-uumpisa tayo. If not, on the other hand, to the taste. So it's like, imagine yourself drinking on this teacup, no? And there will be physical sensation that a wet fur will be filling your mouth. So something like that. Okay, so that's an example of an actual texture. And now let's proceed to simulated texture. So this is still under the elements of art, which is texture. And this time, this is a visual representation, no, an illusion, okay, of something that is tactile, okay, and from which 2D ito, but then parang, alam mo yung, when you look at it, it seems like parang siyang 3D, no, parang buhay, parang totoo. Okay, katulad na itong young hair na ito. Okay, a rabbit na dinrawing nitong si Albrecht Dürer. So si Albrecht Dürer ay isang Dürer. Parang ang sama ng sound of. So Albrecht Dürer, okay? So actually this man isa sa pinakamagaling na artist eh. Actually he was confident of his talent and of himself as an artist. Kaya tingnan niyo naman yung pagkakagawa niya. Imagine that a rabbit or a hare, this young hare, no, is na-paint niya in such a way na para siyang alive, no, para siyang buhay, and it's like three-dimensional that it seems like you can even touch it, na parang akala mo pwede mo siyang mahimas na ganyan, di ba? Katulad sa mga hayop na alaga na pwedeng nahihimas na gano'n. Okay? Kasi sa pagkakagawa niya yan. Okay, so ibig sabihin, ito talaga nagpapakita ng galing ng artist na ito na si Albert Dura, na kung saan is talagang skillful din siyang tao. Unlike other artists na parang hindi sila ganun ka-confident sa kanilang mga talents, hindi sila ganun kagaling sa, hindi nila ganun parang inaano yung sarili nila, nare-recognize as a good one. Ito si Albert, iba siya. Okay? Siya ay at the age of 28 pa lang, no, meron na siyang self-portrait na parang doon sa self-portrait niya na yon, ang dating niya is yung kanyang position is kakaiba sa mga common self-portrait na nakikita natin during that time. Yung kanya talagang may something different kasi yung position niya is talagang nakaharap siya sa audience and then tumitingin siya directly to the viewer's eye, and then meron siyang hand gestures na kung saan parang kahawig nga daw nung kay Jesus Christ kasi kiniklaim niya sa sarili niya na yung kanyang talent is something like divine, na parang galing sa Diyos, ang kanyang kakayanan, at kung paanong si Jesus Christ daw ay pinanganak sa mundo na has something to do sa humanity. Okay? Siya naman is parang corresponding to Jesus when it comes to the world of art. Okay? Na something na, alam mo yun, dala-dala niya itong divine talent na ito ng pagiging artist that can create something, no, beautiful things or beautiful artwork out of his hand. So ganun siya ka-confident sa kanyang galing or sa kanyang talent, no? Kaya meron siya mga ganung portrait of himself na parang nahahawig sa mga portrait ng mga example ng kagaya ng kay Jesus. Okay? So ayan. But then going back to this, ang ating focus is about the simulated texture through this work of Albert Dura. Okay. And dito nga sinasabi natin na talaga yung texture ng fur of this particular animal, okay, a hare or a rabbit, as well as the reflective surface of the eye, ganun magaling sa pagdating sa eyes din to si Albert Dura, na kung saan nabubuhay niya talaga yung kanyang artwork. Kahit yung sarili niyang portrait, ang pinakang main focus dun ay yung kanyang mata at yung kanyang hand gestures. So in this the simulated texture in this painting solidify the remarkably lifelike image of the hare. So parang buhay, no, yung tong rabbit na to or tong hare na to kapag tiningnan mo siya. Okay? All right, so let us proceed. So that's the end for the texture, and this time we will proceed to the value. Okay, so when we say value, it refers to the lightness or darkness within a work of art. So when we say value, it has something to do with the light, okay? And value both defines form and creates the illusion of light. So that's what I have told you a while ago. So that example of artwork was done by this particular person, Katie Kolwitz. So she is a social realist artist as well. Makikita natin sa mga work niya, mostly ay parang there's dark expression na makikita usually sa mga portraits niya. She focused on the women and working class citizens of Germany who were particularly devastated by upheaval, war, and economic inequality. So kung tingnan natin, ang atensyon ng mga work ni Katie Kolwitz mostly ay doon sa nakalunos-lunos, no, nakalagayan ng mga tao during that time in Germany, especially that was the time kasi na ng kapanahunan ng mga Nazis, no, kung familiar tayo dyan sa mga pangyayari na yan during the war, no, na makikita natin yung mga kalunos-lunos na kaganapan, kung paanong maraming mga nanay ang namatayan ng mga anak, maraming mga anak ang namatayan ng magulang, maraming mga taong naka-experience ng gutom, ng mga iba't ibang sakit, at ng lahat ng iba't ibang klase ng kahirapan. So na-expose doon si Katie Kolwitz dahil sa maraming pangyayari, no? Kasi syempre nag-exist ka sa particular time na yan. So yun yung naging mga na-observe mo, yun yung mga na-experience mo sa paligid mo. Okay? So she worked in a number of media including painting, drawing, and sculpture, but a majority of her work comprised prints. So hindi daw siya painter, siya daw ay printmaker. So yun yung sabi niya sa sarili niya. She focused on bold, high contrast depiction of grief and miserable social conditions. So yung sabi nga natin kanina, observant siya doon sa mga bagay na nangyayari. Kasi actually, she she got married to a doctor. So yung asawa niya isang doktor, na every time na nandun pumipila yung mga kaawa-awang pasyente, yung mga may hirap, na may iba't ibang sakit, mga batang yung iba madalas namamatay na lang dahil sa mga sakit. Yun yung mga na-observe niya, na yun nagbigay ng mga inspiration sa kanyang mga drawings, sa kanyang mga artwork, okay? And at the same time, yung mga karanasan din niya sa sarili niyang buhay, yung sarili niyang mga experiences. So bago natin pag-usapan yan, so isa sa mga bagay tungkol kay Katie Kollwitz ay siya ay nag-aral, no, studied in art in Munich, and first female professor of the Prussian Academy of Art. But then later on, yung kanyang maging yung mga artwork niya, no, tinanggal or pinigilan nitong mga Nazis. Okay? And then may mga pagkakataon pa nga yung artwork niya ginamit ng mga Nazis sa kanilang social propaganda, no, na alam niyo naman kung gaano sila ka-powerful during that time. So this is the example. Okay, so actually ang pinag-uusapan nga natin is value. So this is the example that we got in one of the artwork of Katie Kollwitz. So usually ang mga trabaho ni Katie Kollwitz ay mga example niyan is mga etching, no? Hindi siya yung commonly na nakikita natin yung mga pinag-aaralan nating mga paintings na using oil, okay, using pigments, okay? Tempera, something like that. Dito iba. Mostly ang mga work niya is just a combination of black and white. Halos ganun. So doon pa lang makikita mo na yung damdamin, no, yung emosyon at yung nais ipahatid ng kanyang mga artwork. So this particular example, Woman with a Dead Child, okay? So ito ay ginawa ni Katie Kollwitz, okay? Na parang masasabi natin nagpapakita nga ng mga pangyayari sa buhay ng mga tao, yung sobrang kalungkutan sa buhay ng isang nanay na katulad ng example nito. Actually, ang ginamit niya ditong model ay sarili niya mismo, no? At yung anak niya na ginamit niyang model for this etching na parang they looking at the mirror and then sa kanya inilagay sa kanyang artwork. Makikita natin dito, if we are going to analyze first the painting, no, let us talk about the story behind later on. So makikita natin dito yung value, the strong light source in this particular work. So nasan yung light source dyan ang gagaling dito sa side na to, no, at the left side, na kung saan yung light source na yan is parang tumatama dito, no, sa pale na or maputla ng muka kasi nga wala na patay na tong bata na to, parang ganon sa nais i-depict nitong artwork. And then the grieving mother, no, na nasa kanyang side naman yung dark color at dito sa ilalim na to na nagpapakita ng emotion na gustong ipabatid ng artwork na ito. Okay? So from here, yung combination din, no, giving or using the value, nagbibigay din siya ng parang solidity sa form ng pinakang artwork na to. Okay, so the light that is coming from this particular area, nag-i-illuminate siya dun sa face nitong dead child, and at the same time dito sa part na to at sa konting part lang ng forehead nitong model. Okay, actually si Katie Kollwitz din to. And then this part, sa part na to, medyo dark na. Okay, so yan dahil sa emotion na meron. Siyempre, alam natin it is a grieving mom. So the value may also use to emphasize emotive qualities within works of art. So as the mother cradles the body of her child, the light source falls directly on the head of the child, whose pallid face seems to glow. At yung darkest value naman is nandun sa buhok nga ng nanay hanggang dun sa ilalim ng katawan ng bata. And ito ay nagpapakita ng grief, sobrang kalungkutan ng pagkawala ng anak niya, okay, ng emptiness. Okay, so yun yung damdamin. So a mother could relate on this particular example or in this particular artwork. Okay, so and also in this particular artwork, so makikita natin dito yung parang maskulado, no, yung pagkakayapos ng nanay dito. Sabi nga daw, meron akong isang narinig na isang tao nagsabi niya na ang mga nanay talaga napaka-strong nila, no? They always want to protect their child, they always want to embrace their child na kahit sa ano pa man handa nilang gawin, no? Para maprotektehan ang kanilang mga anak. Pero sa pagkakataong ito, makikita natin na parang kahit patay na yung anak niya sa pagkakayakap ng nanay is parang gusto pa rin niyang, alam mo yun, ibigay yung lakas niya to protect, or at least parang siguro if she could save her child, no, na parang talagang binibigay pa rin niya yung full strength niya to embrace yung kanyang anak na patay na kahit na parang wala na siyang buhay, pero parang gusto pa rin niyang gawin yung, alam mo yung mother instinct na still give yung kanyang buong pagmamahal, yung kanyang buong lakas to embrace and protect her child. Yun nga lang, at this point time, talagang wala na, no? Her child is already dead. So during this time, itong pagkakataong ginawa niya to is parang sinasabi nila parang premonition daw. Kasi ito nga, sabi ko sa inyo, ang naging model dito ni Katie Kollwitz ay siya mismo at yung kanyang anak. And then later on nga, during the war, during that time in Germany is namatay nga yung kanyang anak na si Peter. Okay, so parang ang nangyari, before that happened, parang premonition na mangyayari pala talaga yun. And then this painting is nagawa na siya I mean, this is not a painting, this etching, no, ay nagawa na siya prior to that thing na nangyari sa pagkamatay ng kanyang anak, at totoong namatay nga in the end yung kanyang anak. Okay, so makikita natin dito yung mga iba pang artwork ni Katie Kollwitz. So sabi nga niya, it is my duty to voice the suffering of men, the never-ending sufferings heap mountain high. So sabi ko nga sa inyo, mostly ang mga work ni Katie Kollwitz is talagang etching lang, no? Etching using, ito kasi usually class, it is another kind of artwork na parang hindi siya painting, kundi fall under printmaking. Okay? So, i-sketch mo muna, I mean, i-etch mo muna. For example, ang gamit is a kind of bronze na plate. No? I-etching mo doon using a pointed needle. Okay? Etching needle. Yung figure na yan. And then, papahira ng parang black paint or ink, black ink or black paint. And then, kapag parang kumapit na doon yung kulay, papahirin yung other part nun, at ang maiiwan na lang is yung parang na-absorb ng bawat ukit na paint yung maiiwan, and then ipapatong yan sa parang paper or something material na kung saan siya makukopya yung image niya, and then padadaanin into a certain machine na parang printing, okay, sa printing press, parang ganon. And then doon na maiiwan yung image na kagaya ng mga ito na commonly gawa ni Katie Kollwitz. Okay, so makikita natin dyan, hindi lang yung, lagi niya kasing pinapakita dito yung kanyang advocacy kasi dito is related dun sa mga hirap na dinadanas ng tao sa paligid, lalo na yung mga victims of war, ng kagutuman, no, yung mga maralita, yung mga alipin, lalo na yung mga bata. Kaya makikita natin lagi yung bigat, no, yung kalungkutan, yung parang pinapakita niya dito na please end the war, no. Ang daming taong nagdudusa, ang daming taong nawala ng pamilya, nawala ng mga batang naulila, nawala ng magulang. So sino yung yayakap sa kanila, no? Ang dami mga taong nawala ng anak. So katulad nga ng pinoportray niya sa sarili niya, siya mismo naka-experience, no, yung mga gawa niya based din sa sarili niyang experience na nawalan siya ng anak, nawalan siya ng apo because of the war. Okay? So ito yung mga bagay na pinapakita niya sa kanyang mga artwork. And usually, kita natin yan dyan. So, ang kanyang mga artwork, mostly, ang focus yan, mga children. No? Nakikita natin na how are they going to survive during that time. No? Kung halimbawa, wala na silang mga magulang na mag-aaruga sa kanila kasi yung mga magulang nila, for example, tatay na pinasama sa war, and then namatay sa gera, no? Nanay na pwedeng sa sobrang stress, okay, meron dyan, mga buntis pa sila, nawala na sila ng asawa, so nag-iisip sila paano nila bubuhayin, palalakihin yung mga anak nila. So ito yung mga iba pang example ng mga bata na nakakaranas during that time ng mga iba't ibang sakit na minsan di na gumagaling, namamatay na lang kasi syempre kulang naman sa advanced technology pa ng mga panahon na yan. At biktima ng mga kahirapan, biktima ng mga nakakalunos na sitwasyon sa lipunan. So yun yung mostly focus ng mga artwork ni Katie Kollwitz. Okay, so ayan nga yung mga sinasabi natin, no, parang makikita mo dito yung children, no, they are being embraced. So they need their protector, they need their mother, they need their parents. Pero yun nga, commonly sa kanila is mga naulila dahil mga naging biktima sila ng sitwasyon, okay, ng mga pangyayari nung panahon na yun. So yun din, mga kababaihan nga yung mga concept din sa kanyang mga artwork. So this could be an example, no? A mother na pwedeng nawalan ng asawa, tapos naiwan ka, may dala-dala ka pang sanggol sa tiyan mo, no? Mag-iisip ka, how are you going to live? How are you going to continue your life? How are you going to survive? And then meron ka pang baby na kailangang asikasuhin, tapos wala na, no? Wala na yung husband mo, for example. So this is an example, like we can see the emotion, like she is a grieving mom, no? Na pwedeng nawala ng ama, ng asawa, ng anak, okay? Or pwedeng nawala ng ama, anything, no? Na lahat yan pinapakita ni Katie Colwitz sa kanyang mga artwork na kung saan yung pain, yung suffering ng mga karaniwang tao, lalo na yung mga low class, no, na mga kabilang sa mga low class, na madalas niyang na-observe, madalas niyang nakikita, lalo na kapag doon nga sa clinic ng asawa niya is nandyan nakapila yung mga maralitang mamamayan na may iba't ibang sitwasyon, may iba't ibang karamdaman, kahirapan na kinakaharap sa buhay. So the mothers, no? So dito example makikita natin, no, parang alam mo yon, yung ano nang gagawin mo sa buhay mo, tas ayan maiiwan sa'yo yung halimbawa ang dami mong mga anak and then wala ka ng asawa kasi namatay na siya sa gera, no, during that time, for example. So these are the concepts na binibigyang pansin doon sa mga work of art ni Katie Colwitz. And mostly ang mga work niya nga is more on etching, no, mga printed examples, no, hindi sila commonly mga painting with a lot of beautiful colors. Okay, kasi talagang nakaka-relate si Katie Colwitz sa mga nararanasan ng mga tao at ganun din sa mga talagang na-experience niya at yung mga nakikita nga niya sa paligid. So that's it. So kaya nga sinabi niya yung particular quote na yon. Okay? So that's the end of the part of the value. So this time we will proceed to the color. So when it comes to color, of course, we are familiar with that, no? Nasabi nga natin due to an experiment, especially done by Isaac Newton using the prism, na kung saan from the white light that pass through a prism, then it creates the rainbow color. Na usually yun nga yung nakikita natin ngayon, that we only see color because they were interpreted by our brain as what we see them, but actually, di ba, isang liwanag lang naman talaga ang dumadating sa ating mundo, and that is the light coming from the sun. So that illuminates every object around us. So yun nga, from the discovery, no, especially nung kay Isaac Newton nga, that produces, ibig sabihin pala lahat ng mga bagay na may kulay, they all started from a single light that is like a white light, no, na nag-produce ng 7 colors. Lalo na yung 7 colors, importante yan diyan sa mga work of art on how artists use the colors to give justice to their artwork o mga masterpieces. Okay? So we say that the perception of colors occurs when light interacts with the human eye. And of course, as what I have told you, interpreted by the brain. So actually, kung tutuusin, wala naman talaga yung mga kulay. They are just interpreted by our brain. So these are just happening when the object, okay, is being illuminated by the light that is coming from our sun, and then through the wavelength. So the wavelength of light, or they reflect certain wavelengths of light into our eye. So different wavelengths of light appear in different colors. So may mga wavelength ng bawat kulay, no? The red is having the longest wavelength. That's why it is something that is visible, no? Kaya usually sa mga signages, karaniwang ginagamit is red. Kasi nga it reaches our eyes kahit sa far distances, kasi nga it has longer wavelength compared to other wavelengths, okay? Or wavelengths of color. So when the light enters the human eye and strike the photoreceptors, signals are sent to the brain, and that is the time that the color is being perceived by our brain. So the brain interpreted it and give us the idea that you have you are seeing a yellow color, a green color, and so on. Okay. So when the white light of the sun passes through the prism, as what I have told you, it refracted this rainbow color. So alam naman natin yung rainbow color, the red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. Okay. So when it comes to color, there are three main properties, the hue, the value, and the saturation. So ito yun, to simply show you the difference between the three. Okay. And let us define them. When we say hue, is that is talking about the wavelength of the color described by the color name. No? For example, we have cobalt, sky blue, navy, and slate blue. Okay, so pag tiningnan mo yon, di ba, different kind of blue lang yon. Okay, they share the same hue, and which is the blue. Okay, and they differ in value and also in saturation. Now, what is saturation? It is the purity of the color ranging from neutral gray to the pure color. So it is the ranges of a specific hue or color. And well, value, ito hindi to yung value yung pinag-uusapan natin kanina, no, when it comes to an art. This is a value in relation to color, which is referring to the lightness or darkness of color. But then they have a similarity kasi nga it pertains to the lightness and darkness. Okay, dito naman kung paano yung isang kulay is from, for example, puro yellow yan, pero you are making it from lighter yellow to darker yellow. So that is an example of value. Okay? So this is usually the pigment wheel na ginagamit commonly ng mga artists, no? Kung paanong nilang ginagamit yung combination ng mga color. So we know that, okay, nandito yung ating mga primary, secondary, and tertiary color. Okay? So these are based, okay, from the result ng kulay na napoproduce nga ng prism when the beam of light or the white light pass through it. And then nagkaroon na ng variation. Okay, so syempre ranging color. Okay, so this is an example of the colors that usually used by artists for mixing, no? Kapag pinaghalo-halo yan, may lumalabas-labas dyan. At syempre, ginagawa naman na siguro natin yan, no? Nung high school, elementary, sa mga art subject nyo, no? So, alam naman natin yan, the yellow, the red, and the blue, they are the primary. And the secondary is the green, the orange, and the violet. Kasi pag pinagsama mo si red and si blue, magpuproduce ka ng violet. Pag pinagsama mo si yellow and si red, magpuproduce ka ng orange. Same thing with yellow and blue, magpuproduce ka ng green. So, itong green na to, magre-range siya into yellow-green kapag ka naman pinagsama mo sila ng yellow at green. Ganon din naman pag papunta ka na sa blue, you will produce blue-green and also the rest of the colors here. So I think you have already idea about this. And as what I have told you, yun nga, so ito yung pinaka mga primary colors natin, itong yellow, red, and blue. And sila yung secondary at yung mga mapuproduce pa out of them, and they are the tertiary colors. Okay? So the pigment wheel is a subtractive color system. So bakit siya naging subtractive color system? Kasi nga, when you mix them, you can produce, for example, tong primary na to, no, pag pinagmix mo yan, akala mo may maganda kang resultang magagawa, pero ang ending, black lang ang magiging result niyan. So therefore, the more na pinagmimix natin yung mga kulay, the more na nababawasan yung light and color ng mga kulay na yan. Okay? So this is an example of using color, no? So in an industrial printing na kung saan nagkakaroon ng subtractive color mixing system. So yun nga, 'di ba? Hinawawala na yung talagang pinakang bright ng kulay at nagkakaroon na siya ng iba't ibang resulta. So usually ito yung ginagamit sa sa computer, no. Meron tayong cyan, magenta, yellow, and then black. Okay? So ito naman usually nakikita natin sa mga screen natin kung sa mga monitor and television screen. So that these are mixing or the pigment of the three colors na kapag nagpatong-patong silang ganyan, and then at the end the center is having the light when they overlap. Okay? So ito, nagiging siya, parang white screen. Okay? And we divide also our pigment wheel with the warm and the cool color. So may mga artists, nandito yung focus nila, no? They tend to always use the warmer colors. Meron naman ang gusto nilang laging ginagamit is the cool colors. Okay? So sa mga susunod, pag-uusapan natin yung mga example ng paggamit ng mga artist ng mga colors na yan. So ito nga yung isa sa mga example na yan from which this is a kind of thing that happened na nagkaroon ng sunog sa isang lugar. So that is being observed by this artist. So kumbaga 'di ba minsan kapag nakakakita ka ng mga pangyayari, okay, minsan nagkakaroon ng ito ng effect sa'yo. So, since artist siya, while na-observe nila yung sunog ng nangyari na yan sa House of Parliament in London, and then later on, ipinint niya yan na kung paano niya na-observe. And makikita natin dito yung color no, na capture through this artwork nung nanonood siguro tong artist na to. Okay, na mostly nakikita natin dito yung warm color, di ba? Alam naman natin kung sinayang warm color yung mainit na kulay and it has something to do tong mainit, di ba? May sunog nga, di ba? So, yun nga. Kaya makikita natin dito yung gamit ng warm colors dahil ang pinapakita nga dito is tong sunog na nangyaring ito sa lugar na ito ng London, okay? Okay, Turner uses the complementary color scheme in this painting. And complementary color schemes are vibrant and dramatic as they place side by side colors which are opposite each other on the color wheel. So, ayun nga yun yung kaninang pinag-uusapan natin. No? So, this part, mostly ang kita natin dyan are the warm colors. Yung medyo orange, yellow-orange, okay, yellow. So, that's it. Complementary colors appear opposite to one another on the color wheel. So when they are placed side by side, they enhance the vibrancy of one another. But then when they are mixed together, they neutralize one another and work beautifully for blending neutral grays. So kung babalikan natin yon dito sa side na to, no? Parang when you blind those colors, okay, is firstly this side is the warmer color, and then if you're binded that to the cool color, then it results to this particular side ng painting na kung saan nagre-result into grayish color. Okay? So yun yung naging result. So complementary colors include the blue and orange, the red and green, the yellow and the violet. Okay? And also example red, violet, and yellow, green. So yan nga, nakita natin dyan sa example ng work na yan, no? Kung paano kinumbine yung mga colors na yan in this particular artwork. Okay? And this is another example from which we are going to talk about next meeting. So this will end my discussion today. And let me stop this for a moment. Okay. So ayan, we will be talking about the rest of the examples under color in our online class session. So that would be the end of my video lecture today. So goodbye and see you next time.